It's nice to see so many people interested in this session that we've specially introduced this year. Co-producing with the UK, How and Why, a guide to accessing UK incentives and funds. We will actually have a series of presentations from 3 people. Join me in welcoming Annabel Grundy on stage. A little louder, guys. Christopher Halliday. And Amanda Groom. They've come all the way to actually share these incentives with you in the best way they can and to communicate the best possible.
Thanks very much. As I've just been introduced, I'm Annabel Grundy from the UK Global Screen Fund. Before I go into my presentation, I just really wanted to thank Film Bazaar for having us. So Lena and Vikramjit, who invited us, have looked after us incredibly well at this festival. We've been participating in the co-production market, met some fantastic projects, have a completely booked up slate tomorrow, so it's been a really productive experience for us and a really pleasant surprise to meet such interesting producers and such interesting projects, so just thank you for having us. I'm going to give you quite a dry presentation, so I thought what we'd do before I go into the quite specific details of our co-production fund is just show a short video about what we do.
And let the adventure begin. We need to ask you a few questions, I'm afraid.
Hello, Roy.
I knew it was just little creatures, but it felt like magic.
This is getting seriously out of control.
Abridged version, please.
So that's how you win over the crowd.
Yeah.
So that's our trailer. Thank you. Soon to be updated because we're now actually in our 2nd year of operation. So that's just what we did in year 1. I'm very excited about the next iteration. I'm going to talk to you about the Global Screen Fund and focus on our co-production fund. And then I'm going to be followed by my colleague Chris Halliday, who's going to be able to talk to you more about co-production treaty and also accessing UK tax relief. And then I think we have Amanda after that, who is an independent consultant, producer, expert, yeah, who's going to give a more general. Yeah. Okay, great. So can we bring up the slides, please? Okay, so this is just my intro slide. So I'm from the UK Global Screen Fund, which is a new fund that was set up in 2021. It is funded by UK government, as you can see. We have a UK government logo. And we're a new offering in the British public film funding landscape. So BFI already runs a variety of creative funds, including the BFI Film Fund. We're actually new. It's the first time that the UK has had a dedicated minority co-production fund. So our entire purpose is to support UK film industry to work internationally. Sorry, I'm the one with the clicker. Where do I point? Which one? Oh, this one. There we go. Bear with me. So like I said, UK Global Screen Fund, we're a 3-year, £7 million per annum fund designed to boost international development and distribution opportunities for the UK independent screen sector. We are financed by UK's government's Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, and we cover lots of different areas of film sector support. So we support international business development for UK companies. We also directly fund UK co-production, and we also give funds towards promotion and distribution of UK film overseas. What we really want to do is grow revenue and sustainability of the UK independent screen businesses by encouraging them to look beyond the UK and to work internationally. And this is really important to us because even though in the UK the value of the screen sectors in 2021 was 5 billion, the value of the independent sector actually has not grown in the last 3 years, and so we're looking for ways to ensure the sustainability, the viability, the creativity of the independent sector. We think that there's a symbiosis between inward investment and actual indigenous production. So we want to help UK producers to grow international partnerships and to develop projects that have international appeal, and we want to increase the reach of UK independent screen content. Just for context, we're part of a wider department in the BFI. So the BFI has an international department, which I am part of, Chris is part of, and we also have colleagues who do other things, like lead on international policy for the BFI, including development of co-production treaties, so they have quite high-level conversations. We also work with the British Film Commission, who are someone that you would contact if you were shooting in the UK, so we ensure great conditions for productions to come to the UK. We manage international delegations and trade missions. I was recently in Lagos 2 months ago, taking a bunch of UK producers out there, again, to forge international connections. And now I'm here, hoping to do the same thing. We have funding for industry-facing initiatives that promote UK films. So we do things like deliver the UK Pavilion in Cannes each year. And we also have a film export fund, which is for UK films to boost their representation when they're selected for international festivals. So I love my job. It's really international facing. Just quickly, I mentioned the UK Global Screen Fund does a little bit more than just invest in co-production. So we have an international distribution strand. We support sales agents to boost the marketing materials for UK films. And we've also just launched a new distribution fund, which is open to international distributors who want to acquire and distribute UK content. So if there are any distributors in the room here who are interested in showing UK films in India, there's actually some support now available for you for that. We support companies with business development grants, and then, as I said, we support international co-production, so we directly put production funding into films. We also have a promotional campaign, which is an online platform, a destination for people to come and find out more about UK screen content. And we also do research and development. So a big project for us that we're hoping to launch at the end of this year is a data hub giving particularly VOD data on viewing habits and the appeal of UK content. Right, now I'm going to talk about the thing that is probably what you're all interested in. So hot off the press, it says next round open for our international co-production in spring. I can actually confirm that that is the 7th of February 2023, so we will be opening for applications on that date. We have an international co-production fund. The aims, like I said, are to increase the number of international co-production projects involving UK collaboration. If any of you read European or US trade press, you might have seen that yesterday we announced our latest round of projects. So we've just announced 14 UK co-productions from Europe to South America to UK-US co-production. And that's in addition to the 11 that we supported in 2021. So I'm just delighted that we now have 25 UK co-productions in existence since the fund started. We support UK producers to come on board international projects. So we're a minority co-production fund, which means we expect the UK share of finance to be under 50%. We're not trying to get UK producers to have a small partnership with an international partner. We're trying to encourage UK producers to board truly international projects. We do this because we want to open up new business opportunities for them. We also want to make them more visible in the international community, and we also want to grow their track record. So we have an end game in trying to make UK producers be more internationally facing. We're open to the whole world, so we're not just open to Europe. And that's because we want to help people to meet new international partners and explore new markets, and therefore to reach new audiences. And we want them to strengthen ties either with existing international partners or, like I said, open up new relationships, and there's room there for new reciprocity. So what do we look for? If you were coming to us, one of the key things in the meetings that I've been having over the past couple of days is making clear to people that we don't take such an editorial judgment on the projects that come into us. We're much more commercially driven. So we're not looking for a specific genre. We're not looking for a specific kind of talent that's being developed. We're much more interested in producers who come to us and say, this is my audience. This is why I want to work in this territory. This is how I'm going to unlock other funding, or here's the distributor that I have on board. So we're much more interested in supporting the professional development of UK producers and also the commercial potential of projects. So we want to see if there's an international distribution or revenue potential in the project, whether that's a distributor on board or a hit list of people who are potential partners for the project. We're interested in projects that access new markets that the producer may not have engaged with, and we're also interested in supporting producers to build on reputation where they may have worked in a territory before, have developed relationships with distributors or financiers and want to come back and grow that. We have a track record requirement on the producer side. So what we'll look for is at least a theatrical or broadcast credit on our UK producer. And then we'll look at past success as well. And we also require a level of third-party financing on the UK side. So the UK Global Screen Fund will fund up to 50% of the UK share. We expect to see often UK tax credit in the UK share as well, and then some commercial finance or even other UK film funds. Okay, this is a bit dry. We're obviously a government fund, so we have quite a long list of criteria. A key fact for us is that we want to put money into films that are going to go ahead in a relatively short time frame. So we have a requirement that when projects come into us, they're at 60% of finance confirmed. Like I said, we expect to see other funding on the UK share, so we won't fully fund the UK side of production. We want to see tax relief, we want to see other funds in there, so we won't put in more than 50% on the UK side. We want to see an additional UK funding source. We want projects to be capable of qualifying as British, so they can do that in different ways, which Chris will go into later. They can do that by qualifying as under an official treaty, or they can qualify under the cultural test. Like I said, we need some production credits for the lead producer. We need the company to be owned and operated in the UK. Because we're a UK fund, we can only make our award to UK companies. And we expect the project to go into production within 8 months of our funding cycle. So, like I said, we're not doing early stage development. We're not looking for initial investment. We want projects that are on the way to being fully financed and need something to get them over the line. So it can't have started. Apart from documentary, we have a different requirement relating to completion. And we also have contribution requirements in line with existing treaties. So we want to see minimum 10 to 20% contribution on the UK side. We are open to film and to TV, so we have some slightly different criteria if you want to come into us for a television project. TV is the only place that we will allow UK to be the majority financial share, but what we require in order to get that over the line is more than 3 international territories attached to the project. And actually, generally, we usually stick with investing in the minority position. For TV, we're also only open to animation and documentary. And I'm going to move on because all of this stuff is really UK specific. So just to recap, our funding is non-recoupable grant funding of up to £300,000 to the UK producer. So we don't take any equity position in that. It's a full grant. It goes to the producer, it goes into production, it ends up on screen. Projects can be in any language. Application has to be made by a UK production company. We're open to official and unofficial co-productions. This is partly because we're new and also because sometimes, even where a treaty exists, there might be a compelling reason to work outside of it. If you were to come to us with a project where there is a co-production treaty, you'd need to make a good case to us for why you wanted to work outside of that. And we would also still expect you to respect the balances, the balance of contribution that exists in the co-production treaty that is there. But we try to be flexible and to talk to people. I mentioned that we have a track record requirement for producers. We don't have it for writers or directors, so this scheme is open to new talent. If there's an experienced producer with a track record in co-producing or a number of credits that we know can support somebody new through the complexity of a co-production, then we're open to that. Our funding is UK taxpayers' money, so we like to see it spent on UK elements of the production. And we will support post-production costs if there are other creative elements or editorial involvement of the producer. So we're not offering completion funding. We actually want there to be, like I said, creative input from the producer, benefit to the producer. We're not just a kind of mechanism for getting a bit of UK money into your post. I don't think I need to go into the cash flow schedule. I can talk to anyone about that in a one-to-one meeting. And like I said, we have 2 application windows per year. The next one is on the 7th of February 2023, and the one after that will be in August. This relates to our shooting requirement being within 8 months of applying. It relates to us wanting to support projects that are close to going into production. And I think, oh no, this is just a roundup of what we supported in 2021. So we supported 11 projects. We put in £1.725 million. As you can see, if you look at the different territories, we supported projects working in China, we supported projects working with Israel, we supported Canada, South Africa, and then we had quite a lot of European projects. As I just mentioned, if you were to look at trade press, you'll also see that yesterday we announced a further 14 projects that we're supporting in this year. And you can also see that we're supporting feature film and TV projects, and we're supporting animation and documentary. So this still from Merkel is a European documentary that just premiered at IDFA 2 weeks ago. And above we have the Coupe Troupe, which is a French-Chinese animation TV series. So we support features, we support feature docs, we support fiction. And that is the end of the presentation. If you want to take a picture, there's our easy URL and also our email address. I think we're also going to try and leave enough time for some questions at the end. But you've probably heard enough from me, so I'm going to hand over to Chris now.
Just press the big green one now. Hello everyone. So my name is Christopher Halliday, and I am also from the BFI, and I am the Senior Certification Analyst in the Certification Unit. And we are in charge of qualifying films, high-end television, animation programs, children's television programs, video games as British, either through official co-productions or the cultural test. In terms of which route you go, we have official co-productions for film and TV, but not for video games, so obviously that is not relevant here. So what does the UK offer? Currently there is a tax incentive for film, high-end TV, animation, children's TV and video games. And the route to qualifying those is through the certification, which is what we do at the BFI. So certifying your project as British enables you to qualify for the UK tax incentive. It also allows you to claim tax relief during production. So as you are incurring expenditure on your film, you can claim the tax relief as you're going along and put it back into the film. So it's a good way to finance as you're going along. You can also finance against the tax relief. So banks and loanees in the UK, if you get a certificate from ourselves, you will be able to get a loan against what you're due to get for the tax relief before you've even incurred any expenditure. Certifying your project helps with distribution, and obviously if you're doing an official co-pro UK-India, that will help you with distribution within the UK and India, and probably within Europe as well with that UK certificate. And then lastly, there are eligibility requirements for funds within the UK, including the BFI Fund, the Global Screen Fund, and other regional funds around the UK, sorry. And it can be some requirements in festivals to qualify your project as a British project as well. So the qualifying criteria for accessing the tax relief, you have to have a UK production company set up, and that needs to be set up before you start any work on the film production, which is quite a vital thing really, because if the company's set up after you start incurring costs, then unfortunately it wouldn't be eligible and you wouldn't be able to get that tax relief. There needs to be a company to pay the tax relief back to. There needs to be a minimum of 10% core expenditure spent in the UK. The tax relief is available for feature. It's available for documentary, short film and animation films. It just needs to be intended for theatrical release. And that includes film festivals. It doesn't actually have to get theatrical release. So if you have access to tax relief and at the end of it, your project doesn't manage to get theatrical release, that's not a problem. You just show that there was an intention to get that release. So that is, yeah, it's something not to worry about if you don't get that release. And then lastly, what I'm here to talk to you about is qualifying a project as British, and that's either as an official co-production or through the cultural test. I'm mostly here to promote the UK-India official treaty, so I'll go into a bit more detail in that. So here it is, qualifying your project as an official co-production. We have treaties with around, I think it's 13 countries at the moment, and also we are part of the European Convention, which pretty much includes every country within Europe. So whoever we have treaties with, which obviously India is one of those, we can do official co-productions with them. And that can be numerous co-producers at the same time. It doesn't just have to be a bilateral treaty. So the basics of that, actually, I'll talk about the benefits to start with. So the benefits of doing an official co-production is utilising the goods and services within the co-producing countries, getting that technical expertise in the co-producing country that you're co-producing with, accessing the tax incentives, obviously, and other regional incentives in each country. You're obviously combining the finance together and sharing the risk. And then, most importantly, you are officially certifying your project in both countries. So doing an official UK-India co-production will enable you to qualify for incentives in the UK and India and access other funds in those countries as well. So obviously this year, India has announced the tax relief for official co-productions. So it's a big incentive now to use the treaty in terms of accessing those incentives in both countries. So the basics of doing an official co-production, it is fairly detailed, so I am just going to show you pretty much the key points, but if you did want to go into more detail on any particular project, then obviously you can pull me to one side afterwards or contact me at any stage to go through this. There needs to be a co-producing company from each country. So I will use UK-India as an example, obviously. There needs to be a company in India, a company in the UK. Each of those companies puts in a minimum amount of finance, and the minimum amount needs to be 20% of the finance. You can move that finance around how you kind of see necessary in terms of where the most spend is going to be. Any private money that's put into the co-production can be moved between co-producers to match the spend in each country. because basically the basics of it are that the finance put in by each country, the creative spend needs to broadly match the finance that you're putting in that country. So as an example, if the UK was putting in 50% and India were putting in 50%, we'd expect the creative spend to be around 50% in either country. It can be 10% either side. I mean, it doesn't have to be exact, but it kind of needs to be broadly in proportion. The goods and services need to be from the co-producing countries, and the personnel also from the co-producing countries, but it does allow for spend outside of the countries if that's necessary. So if there was location shooting required in another country, that's not a problem. If you needed a director from outside of UK, India, anything like that, you would come to us before and the FFO in India and just kind of get prior agreement on that for third country personnel or spend. You must apply for interim certification, so you need to come to ourselves and the FFO in India at least 4 weeks before you go into principal photography. It's a very open assessment and a very open system, so you can come to us, we can make sure you're meeting those requirements within the treaty and kind of guide you where you need to kind of move certain things around or where it's not meeting the requirements, and we can kind of get you to a position that is kind of making sure you're meeting the requirements. So you're not just submitting the application and we're kind of putting it across through it. It's really open process and we can help you through that. So each co-producer puts in their application to the relevant competent authorities. So ourselves at the BFI assess the UK producer's application, and then the FFO in India assess the application here. If you are co-producing with another country and they're included within the structure of the project as well, obviously they would put in their applications to the equivalent body in their country as well. If there are more than 2 co-producers, the minimum finance actually decreases to 10%, which gives you a bit more flexibility in having that third co-producer as well. And if you're going through the official co-production route, you don't have to do a cultural test and no points test. It's purely looking at the finance, the filmmaking spend, where that's taking place, and making sure the personnel and work is taking place in the co-producing countries where it can. So that is the first way to an official co-production, qualifying you in the UK, India, and the other countries you may be co-producing with. The cultural test is the other route in the UK, but that is certifying you as purely a British project. We do get unofficial co-productions between the UK and India, and they will work with a UK producer, or they will come to the UK and set up a special purpose vehicle, so a company specifically for making the film. And then you would have to pass the cultural test, which is a points-based test, and you need to get possible 18 out of 35 points. And it's looking at the content of the film, so subject matter, where it's set, the lead characters. It's looking at the cultural contribution, diversity, creativity, and heritage, and then it's looking at where the work and persons are from. It's a fairly straightforward cultural test, and again, we would guide you through that. Obviously, the one thing with that, it's qualifying you just in the UK, and it's not qualifying you as an Indian project as well. It's an unofficial co-production, so you obviously would not be able to access the co-production tax incentives in India if you're going that route. So what's the tax relief worth in the UK? It's up to 25% of qualifying expenditure. It's capped at 80%, so you can claim on up to 80% of the total expenditure. So as an example, if it was £1 million project and it was all UK spend, you could claim on £800,000 of that, and 25% of that works out at £200,000. So it generally works out you're going to get back 20% of the total UK expenditure with that 80% cap. But obviously, if the total UK spend is under that 80% cap, it's 25% of that. Slightly complicated, but I can talk you through that if you wanted to know more. There's no minimum budget, so it can be any size project, multi-million pound film, it can be a short for £10,000. It can be any project that can access the tax relief as long as it's got that theatrical release intention. And the way it's calculated is just filmmaking expenditure used or consumed in the UK. So any expenditure that is used or consumed in the UK is eligible for the tax relief. Here's a basic example of what it would be worth for a UK India official co-production. £1.1 million budget, total filmmaking expenditure is £1 million, and then £800,000 of that is UK spend. You can obviously claim 25% of that spend, but it's capped at 80%, so you get £160,000 back. That would go directly to the UK company. And then on the Indian side, obviously qualifying as an official co-production, you can access those incentives on the Indian spend as well. Right, how to apply. It's an online application form. As I said, the UK producer submits application to ourselves, and then if you're doing co-production, the Indian producer submits it to the FFO. We just have basic supporting documents you attach, so the script, treatment, budget, co-production agreements, and a synopsis. The turnaround time for our assessments, 8 to 10 weeks. It's always better to come to us as early as possible with your projects. Again, we can talk you through anything before you're submitting, just to make sure you're getting it right. So if you're looking at that and you're confused by any sections, then just always give us a call or drop us an email before. There is an interim and a final certificate. So the interim is during production, and as I said, you can use that to claim on expenditure as you're incurring it. And then once the project's complete, you would do a final application, just to make sure that everything you said at interim is as it is, and you would get that final certificate to claim on any remaining expenditure. Anything I've missed? No, that's about it. That is the basics of it. It's, again, quite a dry subject matter, but it's free money and it's there to be used, and I'm here to encourage the UK-India treaty to be used. So it's not being used yet, and we really want to get it used and kind of made the most of. So there we go. Thank you.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Amanda Groom, and the reason I'm a surprise is because I was approached just at MIPCOM, just 2 weeks ago, by Film India, by Wendy Bernveld, by Film Bazaar, to come here and talk, because what I do is very different. It's very original, it's independent. And it's interesting that we three have never met, and yet I've been working with the BFI on a co-production potential project with South Korea for now about 4 years, so I'm surprised we haven't actually met. I am the founder, the owner of the global company, The Bridge. And The Bridge is a bridge. It's a bridge between all nations in all content. And I formed this many years ago. My father lived in Australia, my mother lived in London. I spent half my childhood in a plane going backwards and forwards between the two. I could never understand why there was a Western TV world and an Eastern TV world. Made no sense to me. And the bits that I loved the best were the bits that I spent in Asia. That's why I still work in Asia here. I'm delighted to be here. So when I started working with South Korea over 10 years ago, I could not get a meeting at a UK broadcaster. No one wanted to know. They do now. Now they can't wait. And what I'm saying to you is where you are now is exactly where they were then. Same applies to Taiwan, same applies to Thailand. There is nothing special about the countries. There is no great creativity about these countries, although one might say British creativity is brilliant, we know that. South Korean creativity is brilliant, but it is also supported by a network and a facility and a system and a strategy, and that's what enables it to shine. You are no less able than any of those people to do exactly the same thing. But you do need that system to be able to do that. It is very hard doing an independent production. Sometimes you have to put your house on the line. You have to work day and night. It's rows, all sorts of rows happen with family, etc. It is not easy. And there's never enough money. It doesn't have to be like that. South Korea, Taiwan, Thailand are all proving doesn't have to be like that. And I believe that India is just at that same point. Now, my first co-production was a Welsh-South Korean co-production, which no one in the world would have been able to understand. For £30,000 it was made. It was a tiny thing. Now we work with thousands of hours of television. We work with PBS, Scripps Network, Sony Pictures, National Geographic, Scripps Network, National Geographic channels, Arte, Canal Plus, PBS, I mentioned, BBC, ITV, Channel 4. It is possible to work with all of these people, and you can do it just as much as others can do it. Now, Indian cinema is becoming increasingly interesting, and thank goodness, we have moved away from the patronizing white savior model of previous drama. It's all changing right now. It's no longer about the white savior. It is about Indian stories that resonate with everyone around the world. And thank goodness for the SVODs, the OTTs. They're the ones, in many senses, that are buying it and making it possible. And, of course, countries like the UK, with their extraordinary co-production potential, that they offer the status and the legitimacy and the gravitas that then begins to make all of this real. But the point that I'm really making is it's real, it's happening. And I know that you want questions, so I'm just trying to be really, really quick. So what these guys are saying is really important. Bollywood, in a way, has been so successful, it's almost been too successful, because it hasn't needed to go outside. But it does now, and it can now. Manjot Matthew at ZTV has a big setup now in Mina, in all across North Africa, which is dealing between India and the US, and is taking thousands of hours of programming, all of which you could be selling. Sunita Ochil, again with Z, is running a Canadian co-production studio in Canada for Indian-Canadian co-pro content. Z is doing a massive co-pro content with natural history programming with the lovely Martin Williams, called The Lion's Last Roar. It's all about the enormous opportunities that have come up through SVOD, AVOD, OTT, and the broadcast market. And most of all, because the license fees have stayed the same, but the budgets have increased, what is really changing now is money is coming into the market in entirely different ways. Some of that is venture capitalist and is not easy to deal with it. Some of it is grants, some of it is opportunist. But it has never happened like this before. Most of that money went into tech. Well, you only have to look at what's happening with tech now. That money is now leaving tech, and it is coming into the creative industries. And it is your stories that are wanted, your stories from the ground, not patronising, colonial, Western point of view stories. Your stories, that's what's wanted. So I have to be very quick, and so I'm sorry if I have spoken very quickly in order to get that message across so that there can be some questions. But that's just my summation. So thank you for these guys very much for explaining all that the British are offering.
Do we have any questions? Yes, we have one here. Is there a mic to be run? I think there's one coming.
This is just a general question both for British Film Institute and also the fund. When you say British companies, is it just incorporation in Britain, or is there another requirement in terms of residency, citizenship, and is it just company paying taxes? And the second question added to that is when you say qualifying expenses, how do you drill down to the qualifying expenses? Is there any exceptions to that?
The question was, are there any other requirements other than being UK registered company?
No, we're purely looking at a production company being set up in the UK, and the finance needs to run through that company. It needs to be set up before you start incurring costs on the film, so before you start principal photography. It's a fairly straightforward process setting up a company in the UK. Or obviously the other option is to find a UK producer in the UK to run the costs through their company. It's quite common to set up a company in the UK specifically for a project, which, as I said earlier, is called a special purpose vehicle. And it just makes it a little bit more cleaner and easier in terms of when you're looking at the tax relief expenditure. It's obviously the company's there specifically for the film, so you can see clearly how much you're incurring within that company. But no, it's just having that film production company set up.
And there was a second part to the question on the UK expenditure and how that is
the qualifying
quantified.
expenses, how do you calculate that? And
Yeah. So it's actually different between the UK Global Screen Fund and the tax relief. In the UK Global Screen Fund, we're slightly more flexible. So we want our grant funding to be spent on what we call UK elements. That can include taking a head of department to shoot internationally. It can include producer fee. It can include UK cast. Whereas I think tax relief, you have a slightly stricter used and consumed classification.
Yeah, it's called used or consumed. So any expenditure incurred within the UK is eligible for tax relief, but it needs to be filmmaking expenditure. So costs like marketing or legal costs that aren't necessarily required to make the film wouldn't be eligible, but any costs incurred on making that film are eligible, and they need to be expenditure that has been spent in the UK. However, if there are costs incurred, say, in India for writing a script, and then that script is being used in the UK, you can claim on that expenditure because the script, although written outside of the UK, has been used and consumed in the UK. So there's certain nuances that allow you to claim on kind of creative elements that actually took place in India but were used in the UK.
Thank you.
Oh, there's another one here. Oh, there's one at the front and then someone behind.
Hi, I read in one of the slides that to qualify for a co-production with UK, one either goes through the treaty or one has to pass the culture and history test, something of the sort. Small clarification, so if one does not want to go through the co-production treaty, then one would have to clear the script, I believe would have to clear the culture and history test. Can you elaborate on exactly what points that would entail, clearing the history and culture test? So let's say it's an Indo-British collaboration, the film needs to be shot in UK, India, it's a World War II story, blah, blah, blah. Now, I do not want to take the co-production treaty. I want to work outside the treaty. Is that possible, A? And will I still get the benefit of a co-production? Thank you.
I think I got most of it. So if you were going through the treaty but then changed your mind halfway through, is that right?
No, I'm not exploring the idea. I want to co-production. I want to make sure that, I'm not ruling out any options, and I believe there is an option of doing a co-production by qualifying for the culture and history test, right? So you all have the option. I read in one of the slides that either I need to go through the co-production treaty, or to qualify, I need to clear, when I say the script needs to clear a culture and history test. Is that right?
Yeah.
That was on one of the slides.
So there's two ways to qualify, either as an official co-production.
Right.
If you do that route, you do not have to do the cultural test.
Right.
Official co-production obviously qualifies you in both countries. If you went through the cultural test in the UK, that is qualifying you purely as a British project, and all the expenditure has to go through the UK company. You can spend the money wherever you like, so you can spend the money in India or other countries, but it has to run through the UK company that you're using in the UK.
So just so that I've understood this, you're saying if I go through the culture and history test, then all the expenditure has to be routed only through the UK entity. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. And it qualifies you purely as a British project to access the tax incentives in the UK. I mean, there may be other incentives you can access in other countries, going through the cultural test route, but you need to check what their qualifying criteria is, because if you need to qualify in that country for incentives as well, then that's when you would do an official co-production.
It's a very interesting point you raised. If there is a tri-country co-production, let's say it's India, Poland, and UK, and if UK already has a co-production treaty with Poland, then I guess it makes it a lot easier. I'm just saying.
It's quite common to do a three-way co-production, and you can access all the incentives in UK, Poland, and India. There's benefits to both routes, but if you are having to qualify in a country for incentives, that is when you would have to use an official co-production treaty.
All right, thank you. I'll just stop my question. There's a whole bunch of them, but thank you so much for your input. I appreciate it. Yeah.
If I didn't quite answer all of that, I'm happy to chat afterwards when I can hear properly.
Maybe on a similar vein, just perhaps this is for Amanda, if you don't go the official co-pro route, what other sources of money for co-production commercially are there that you're dealing in other Asian countries that you think could import over to India?
That's a great question. Can everybody hear me? They can now. Thank you. That's a great question about where else does the money come from. 1 million different sources now. So independent financiers looking for an equity position. Independent financiers looking for a financial return position, looking to want to come out within a short time. Grants, brands, commercial incentives from different countries, particularly as we've all been so shut down during COVID. From government educational sources, from scientific sources. For example, to give you an example off the top of my head, Thailand, for example, has learned that as a nation, it is a far more sustainable industry for Thailand to focus more on insect production for eating than rice production. And as a result, it has put a vast amount of land to insect production. So as a result of that, because very few people know about that, it then invested fairly heavily in a program that we did with Nova, with PBS. Of course, that money was correct. Of course, it's Nova, PBS. We're talking, it was checked at every possible stage. But so there are industries, Thailand, again, rice. Thailand loses millions of dollars of rice because all the money is made by the middlemen in Thailand. It wants to take some of that money back into Thailand. So it is looking for ways in programming, food programming. How does it incentivize people to, in fact, buy rice that actually comes from a Thai rice producer and not a middleman who is in France or the UK or the US. So all of the models that are changing in our world commercially are all providing money potentially for television. And Wendy, if you would like me to give you another list of 100 other options, I could do it.
So think outside the box, dependent on the content, right?
That really succinctly said.
Yeah. I'm just going to ask Chris a question because there's something that we didn't cover in our presentation, which is something we often get asked, which is how do you find a UK co-producer if you want to work internationally?
That is a big thing, obviously, if you want to co-produce with the UK. A good way to start is we list all the official co-productions that have been certified previously. So co-productions have been certified for the last many years, 15 years, and we list all those on our website. So if you go onto the BFI certification website, I can either send you those details, but there's basically a yearly list of all projects that have qualified as official co-productions. You can take a look to see if any of those projects kind of fit in with the way you make film or the genre that you're looking to produce, and then try and get in touch with the UK producer who's done that. Then there is the British Council, who list all film production companies and all the films they've ever made.
Everyone, I think, who is British can help, frankly. We all know people who are co-producers.
That's true, but as a public institution, we wouldn't ever recommend an individual. So there are some public sources that people can find, including things like the British Film Commission. Also on the UK Global Screen Fund website, we list the productions that we have supported. So there's 25 international co-productions just over the last 2 years. And we're also working on a directory, but it's not quite there yet. So we're going to try and make it even easier.
I mean, 100% definitely come to us and ask about it, and we can direct you in the right place and kind of guide you to UK producers as best we can.
Any other questions? Oh yeah, someone at the back.
Yeah, hi. My name is Santo, and I'm a British citizen currently making films in India, to be specific in Hyderabad. So my question is furthermore to what the gentleman over there asked. So there was something regarding the cultural test, and I think 18 points is the criteria. So if someone like me associates with crew from British, from my British crew, like say an editor or a cinematographer, does that automatically qualify my project?
So I think the question was, does being a British citizen qualify you under the cultural test?
Yeah, having
correct?
3 British citizens working on the project, does that automatically qualify it?
So, I mean, the culture, again, the most important thing is having that UK company. But in terms of the cultural test, there's points available for numerous sections. So the first section is looking just purely at the content of the film, and you can actually pass the cultural test just on the content, so where it's set, where the character's from, and what the subject matter is. But it's also made that if it wasn't British or European subject matter lead characters, you can still pass the cultural test on where the work is taking place, who's written the script, where the persons are from, and that includes citizens or residents. And yeah, we're looking at the post-production work where that's taking place. So even if it's not British or European subject matter, then never rule it out. It's been made to be able to pass it. We don't want to restrict the content of the film, obviously. So it's there to be used for everyone, and it's very accessible.
Yeah, so different routes to qualification.
Yeah.
Any more, or are we at the end? I think we might be at the end. Or we're here until Friday, so please do grab us after the session, or I think we've still got some meeting slots available if you email us in the delegate book contact information. But again, thanks for having us, and stay for the next panel. I don't know who it is, but I'm sure it'll be great.
Right, thank you.
The next panel is going to begin in a couple of minutes, so please stick around.